as we breathe through these times, you know, the country is in a process of becoming more inclusive. I know it might look like chaos, but this is what I know. It's really cool in part because inclusivity is one of the Center for Spiritual Living Prescott's 4 primary values. If we were still in the building, as you walked in, you would see those 4 primary values actually written in gold leaf. Just as you come in, it's right above the door. And it's a beautiful thing. This month, as we're talking about mindfulness, and this week as we talk about mindfulness intentions, our intention to be inclusive is playing itself out. And so I ask you just to remember that. And one of the big questions I'm getting these days is, you know, Reverend Kathleen, I set my intention for this, and I did all the prayers, and I've done, you know, there's sticky notes all over my house with affirmations. I am living and breathing and calling forth this intention I've set, and it ain't happening. I'm getting bupkis. I'm getting crickets. That is an incredibly frustrating part of this process. The process is still working, but it is, I will admit, kind of, it's not the fun part. You know, I recently heard in the back of my mind, consciousness is curative, not comfortable. And so I thought I'd talk a little bit about what that whole process is. When I first came here, more than 10 years ago now, I was welcomed in some beautiful ways, including having 2 separate people basically hand me the keys to their house to stay in for about a month and a half each. So while I was looking for a place to be, I had this wonderful opening happen. I got what somebody else's vacation home was. And it was a beautiful home. It's a gorgeous home. I loved it. It was all full of love already. It was also all full of crickets. And so my ability to sleep was somewhat constricted. And my ability to feel safe putting my feet on the ground first thing in the morning was also somewhat affected. And so I found myself doing a whole talk about it, about how I knew that I was starting to name the crickets. And I was doing my work. Don't get me wrong. I was praying those crickets right out of the room. I was doing all the physical stuff I knew I needed to do. I was a flippin' minister, and I knew how to do this stuff. And yet, I met pervert cricket, who I found in my dad. I met zombie cricket, who was back even though I was sure I'd killed him. And I had just started watching, I think it was The Walking Dead or something at that point that became famous. I had several crickets named. I wasn't excited about it. And so the fact that I started praying and suddenly there were more crickets and I was interacting with them in a personal way, I found very frustrating. And what I discovered was we do our affirmations and we do our work, but what I was really doing was sending out to the universe crickets, 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 and I got them back. And so then I discovered a gentleman by the name of Carlisle who talked about the cosmic no. And so I stopped with the affirmations and I got into denials and my cosmic no. This whole planet is shouting out a cosmic no to the idea of separation right now. And so as we get to our cosmic no so that we can go on and declare what it is we do want, I just want you to remember that it's part of the chaos is this no that is having the volume turned way, way up on it. If you haven't noticed, people are getting loud about the racist institutions and the racist ways of thinking are no longer acceptable to anyone. And we're starting to recognize that inclusivity is a value worth espousing. Now, yes, we got to a little earlier than everybody else. Well, on the news anyway. But just remember that cosmic no is going to call in some chaos. One of the things that can get in the way of bringing forth our manifestation of our intention is also going unconscious. Last week, I talked about just breathe. And I was lifting up my black brothers and sisters in the Christ consciousness, people of color in general, which is more than just black. And I started talking about the coincidences. Now, when I started, I was thinking there's a lot of, history repeating itself, just like, that thing that goes on the internet about JFK and Abraham Lincoln and all the things they had in common. I went unconscious because I made the heroes of the story, you remember? It was a white UU minister from Boston and a recent college grad from Columbus, Ohio, another white woman. There are plenty of people of color who are heroes in this movement, and yet because I went unconscious, I just kept looking at that one specific example of how we are rising up. And so for that, I apologize. And I offer it to you as a non-malicious mistake that we can all make, that we all generally make over and over. And we will probably do it again. And the general idea is to become more conscious of when we are doing it so that we can pivot and go back to a more conscious, inclusive behavior. Because right now we have neural paths that have been set down for generations, allowing white privilege to be the hero of the story, allowing white privilege to just unconsciously come out. And so there's where I went off track, and I apologize for that. Something else that can happen as you set your intention and try to move into it, and I learned this in 12 steps. Things just go hooey. It's insane, or it's insane making anyway for me. Marianne Williamson recently tweeted, and I believe this is kind of a quotation or a general quotation from A Course in Miracles. She wrote, "Love brings up everything unlike itself so the soul can purge itself of our barriers to love. The grief, loss, shame, and rage we encounter can be devastating, but on the other side of the storm, we emerge reborn." So as we call in a greater good for ourselves, and maybe for you that's a better job, it's a greater sense of prosperity, it's a new relationship, it's anything. Love is going to bring up everything unlike itself that is standing between you and this thing that you have set the intention to manifest. You have set the intention to experience this good, and love is going to bring up everything that's in your way. Many of us come to the Science of Mind through 12 steps, and so did I. I came in through the program of Codependence Anonymous. For those who don't know what CODA is, it's basically for those of us who don't need drugs and alcohol to mess up our lives. Our addiction is fixing other people. Doesn't work, but we keep trying, and we get really creative. So anyway, what I learned is that generally around the 6th and 7th steps, as I become aware of the ways that I've gotten off track, and I ask Spirit to remove these old beliefs and behaviors based on those mistaken beliefs. As I ask Spirit to remove them, what happens is I see them more and more in myself. I see the way I'm doing it all over the place, and it gets really flippin' annoying. And it's so easy to drop out of the space of love, out of the space of acceptance, into, well, if you would just do it right, Sibley, if you would just act like the way you're supposed to. Yes, the voice in the back of my head is that annoying. If I would just do it right, I'd be fine. I know what I'm supposed to be doing, and yet I unconsciously reach for old behaviors. If you think you never do this, I'm going to ask you to do that exercise I've asked you to do before. Go move your trash can in your kitchen, and while you're at it, move all the cutlery. because you will go to the old spaces for them over and over and over before you switch over. There's such a thing as cellular memory and muscle memory. And you got to figure, if we've been doing things one way our whole life with the best will in the world, it's still going to take us a minute to change course, right? And so that sense of frustration, that sense of love, you can bring up a few less things. I think I've got your point, love. You can stop bringing up everything unlike yourself. That's actually a really good sign. It means that you are doing the deeper work that will allow you to manifest and truly enjoy and never ever have to re-manifest the good. Because sometimes we manifest our good and then we forget what we're doing and we go back to the old way. It's the difference between a cure and a healing. A healing is when it never ever comes back to bother you again. So you might go unconscious a few times. You might watch love bring up everything you never ever wanted to see in the mirror. The other thing that I see is an epidemic of unworthiness, or people believing that they are unworthy of a greater good. As we create our intentions, we have to remember that Spirit can only do for us what Spirit does through us. And so in the Science of Mind textbook, it says, then knowing that the thing can work for us only through us, let us begin to accept today more good than we experienced yesterday, and to know that we shall reap a harvest of fulfilled desires. Now, Spirit can only do for us what it can do through us, but Dr. Holmes is telling us, don't think you're going to make the complete switch overnight. Today I will accept more good than there was in my life yesterday. Today I will accept more love. Today I will accept more joy. And all I have to do is, for myself, according to my own yardstick and judgment, accept a little bit more than I let in yesterday. There is a story I've told many times, and hopefully some of you have not heard it. When I worked for the public defender's office, Attorney Michael Begovich gave me permission to share this story about a woman who went away for the weekend, came back and realized her home had been burglarized. And a safe had actually been picked up and moved out of her home. And so the cops asked her, do you know who might have done this? And she said, actually, yes. And they all went down, knocked on the door. There it is, the safe right in the middle of the living room. So that was an easy case. However, just to be sure, the cops asked her, could you please open that so we can prove that it is your safe? And so she opened it, and the cop said, maybe you should check inside, make sure everything's there. So she pulls out, yes, this is my money, and she counted it. She said, yes, it's all there. Yes, and here's my gun, and oh, look, here's my drugs. All of us have that safe somewhere in our minds that says, this is the only good I can have, and this is as much as I can have. And we will go so far as invoking the law to get back that level of good we thought we could have, because we don't know that the kingdom of heaven itself is ours. We don't, there's a quotation in Sermon by the Sea where Ernest Holmes says, it is the Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. Why don't you take it? We are ultimately worthy, and yet that old belief in unworthiness sometimes, maybe just for me and that one lady who had a safe and became one of the clients of the Office of the Public Defender in San Diego, we don't realize just how much good there is, and that there is good for us, and we ought to have it. That it is part of the divine plan or pattern to evolve into greater good for all of us, to evolve into more wisdom. Spirit is experiencing itself through you, and it wants to experience more good. It wants to experience more oneness. And so every time you or I or anybody else puts up a wall between us and our good because we think, oh, I should be polite. Oh, I shouldn't take the last cookie even though it's obviously yours. Every time we say no to the gift, Spirit gets blocked for a little while. We're not going to be able to do it forever. Spirit is going to have its way as us. Here's the last part, and I will tell you that this has been my experience about myself. So I'm hoping some of you can relate. I set my intention. I do my prayer work. I start looking at the ways in which I am unconsciously keeping out that good. And then right on cue, my coach will hear me say, but it's hard. I'm tired. I want it to just happen with ease and grace. Well, it's too late for me to do it with ease and grace. So, you know, this teaching was originally based within the teachings of the master teacher, Jesus, who we call a Christ, one of the people who brought through the Christ consciousness and allowed it to flow through him without really getting in its way. And so he set up a way of being in the world that makes healing automatic. Healing, not just cures, healing. That makes prosperity a done deal. And Holmes tells us that the world has never yet followed the simple ethics of Jesus, yet it is loud in its proclamation that it is Christian. We have this wonderful list of things to do and a way to live that is guaranteeing us joy, that is guaranteeing us an awakening to oneness and a living from the kingdom of heaven, and yet we keep doing something else. There's another wonderful quotation by G.K. Chesterton that says, Christianity has not been tried and found wanting, it has been found difficult and not tried. Guys, this is not a philosophy that will get you rich quick. This is not, I'm going to hand you the keys to the kingdom and you never have to do any work. This is not, I'm going to put somebody else up on a pedestal, whether it's Buddha or Jesus or Allah or even just, you know, the one mind. It is not a teaching that says, once I deify that, I'm off the hook for having to do the work. It is not that. There will be work involved, which is wonderful because it means you're in charge of how fast you do it, which tools you use, and how you go about it. This is you creating the world that works for everyone. This is the divine within you as you choosing to manifest good. You cannot be stopped. The divine within you will not remain hidden. This is simply who you are, and you are awakening to it, not putting it in there, not earning it, just awakening to this incredible good that you already are. So, here's one of the tricks I've learned to start getting out of my own way. I set the intention for myself, and then I think about it in terms of not me receiving it, but a child that I particularly love. My nieces and nephew have gotten lots and lots of good prayer. So think about maybe one of the children in your life, maybe one of the kids from our program, the Children's Association of Awesomeness. Yes, they named themselves. Think about them. How much good are you willing to accept on their behalf? If you want them to have it, you must be willing to accept it for yourself. So if you're asking small, if you're playing small, remember that the good you're claiming for yourself is what you're claiming for all people everywhere. We just said that. Again, Ernest Holmes wrote, we should carefully consider whether we're willing to experience the results of our thoughts. There should never be any hurt in them for ourselves or anyone else. We may be sure that if there is hurt for others, there must also be hurt for ourselves. And I would suggest it flips around. Just because you're part of a group that is historically underpaid, whether it's a teacher or a nurse or a musician, does not mean that you should accept that as normal and good, but allow Spirit to pay you what you're worth rather than the going rate. Do you understand this metaphor I'm trying to work with? You deserve more good. There is good for you and you ought to have it, according to Emma Curtis Hopkins, and I am claiming it for you and with you right now. And so your homework, your invitation this week is to take a little bit more good and say yes to it tomorrow, on Monday. And then on Tuesday, see if you can outdo Monday. And just keep going throughout the work, experiencing a little bit more oneness, a little bit more good, allowing a little bit more of spirit to be within you and to be through you into the world than happened, say, even last week. Whatever level you woke up at this morning, I invite you to take a little bit more of the good, of the God experience that you deserve, that you were born to have. And because I know that this is the truth about you, I'm just taking us into prayer right here and now. There is a single power and presence in the universe. It is unstoppable. There is no second power that's trying to get in its way or that could, even if we wanted it to. And so I stand here today declaring with my voice, allowing Spirit to speak me, to declare a day of good, to declare a time of plenty and peace, and to usher it in as the expression of the divine that has always wanted to be in form, as us, for us, and through us. I know that we are one in spirit. It is the one mind thinking through me right now that calls forth this good for everyone, for all beings everywhere. Children, adults, whites, blacks, people of color, people who are differently abled or neuroatypical, people who are not able to hear or see or taste or smell in the same way most people can. All of us are divine. And so I declare a day of awakening and awareness in which Spirit simply shows up as a bright light, as the truth that we can no longer deny, and everything else simply falls away. Without argument, without protest, without any kind of power. This is Spirit as it is and has always been, that is now manifesting through, for, and as us. And for this, I give great thanks. For this, I get up and dance and celebrate the good that Spirit is. And I just know that all I've done is stand witness to the sky being blue, to the chair being solid, to Spirit as it is. And having stood witness, having come into agreement with this, it must now be made manifest according to the law of cause and effect. And if this rings true for you, I ask you to say with me, and so it is.